Cool. Hi everyone. So my name is Khan. I'm a principal engineer in Atlassian. So I have been at Atlassian for about 2 years, and previously I was working in Singapore. So I'm very delighted to be part of this event with all of you today. And we have been enhancing our external authentication capabilities on the Forge platform. And today I'm excited to discuss this improvement with you and demonstrate how you can leverage the new features to develop your Forge app. Integrating with external authentication providers such as like Google or Slack. So before I start, has anyone here built a Forge app that integrate with other OAuth provider like Google, Slack? Feel free to respond via Zoom React. Nice. I just see. I think someone just raised their hand. Yeah. Cool. So it's great to see. Oh, okay. Yeah. Some of you already built Forge app using our external auth API. But for who hasn't built yet, don't worry. This presentation we also give you some good stuff too. Yeah. So the agenda of the talk today is that first I will present our support for integrating external auth provider, and next I will discuss some existing limitation. Actually, it's like all limitations, and then I will go through the recent improvement, including new APIs, and explain the new unlock capabilities. And next, more exciting part, Igor, my teammate, will give a live demo on sample Forge app and demonstrate how he used the new capabilities to provide good integration experience to end users. And last will be question and answers. But during the presentation, feel free to raise your hand to ask me if you have any questions. Sorry. So for platform support external authentication integration in 3 aspects. First, it manages the consent flow. API is provided to trigger the consent flows, and once it is completed, the platform also handle the redirect from external servers. Second, it manages the token, including the token refreshing. And last, a set of API is provided to app developers to interact with the external servers. Yeah. So before I go through our API, let me quickly go through on how an external auth provider is declared on a Forge app. Okay, so this is an example from our documentation to demonstrate how we can declare a Google integration on a Forge app. So from here, you can see we need to define the key and the name. Scope here will be list of the scope that the Forge app required to get granted from the users. And notice also in the action, there are few URL that we need to configure also, like authorization, exchange, refresh token, revoke token. And last one is the retrieve info profiles. This one later we will also discuss about that. But basically, this is the API that Forge will call to the external provider to get the profile information. And based on the response from the provider, we could do some mapping to get the ID, display name, and avatar URL. So we need to define what is the mapping from the response from the provider and map it to our required feature properties. Yeah, so more detail on provider is could be, I think is here it's discussed here. Yeah. So this was the list of API that we provided. Basically, we provide 3 functions. Has credential to check whether any account integrated with the Forge app, request credential to display the consent flow and ask for all of the scope defined in the manifest just now I showed, and fetch is the function to call external APIs using the token obtained from the consent flows. Yeah. So I guess this one quite familiar with someone already implement a Forge app, integrate with external providers. But is there any other question? Anyone have any questions so far? Okay, great. So this is an example of how we can use the API on a Forge app code. So first, we will get the Google provider, and then we will check whether the user has already connect or integrate with their accounts. And if yes, then we can make a fetch to external OAuth providers APIs. In this case, we are calling to Google API, and we are trying to get the list of the contact. Yeah. And if the user haven't ground any scope or integrate with their account yet, we go con Google.request credentials. This one will show a consent screen, and then the user can follow that one to provide to ground the scope and complete the overall consent flow, so that the app can use the token and make a con to APIs, to the Google APIs. So as you can see, so there are some existing limitations. So an app can't control what scope to ask to the user. There are no ways. So right now, every time when we call has credential, it will request all of the scope that the app will define and manifest. And the second limitation is that app do not know what scope user are grounded. So during the consent flow, user may select or unselect some scope, and then app cannot know what is the scope the user has grounded. Yeah. And last is that no support for multiple accounts. So a user may integrate with multiple accounts. For example, let's say if they might integrate with their Google work email address, but they also can integrate with their own personal, or someone can share in the account in the company. Yeah. But right now, there are no way to support for multiple accounts. User may integrate with multiple account, but the app cannot select what account to use when they make a con to the external APIs. Yeah. So with that, with those limitation in mind, recently we enhanced our set of APIs and just released them recently. Let me go through the doc and explain you. Note that later Igor also demonstrate it in action. Yeah. So this is the doc for external fetch APIs. If you haven't visited it recently, then you might notice the change. But basically, this is the new interface that we are providing. Compared with just now, I show you only the 3 functions. So the last 3 functions is still there, but there's some minor changes that we now accept the scope as an optional argument for the function has credential and request credentials. For the fetch method, there are not much changing on this one. But we also introduced 3 new functions called get account, list account, and as account. Yeah. So we are talking about the external account, and we also publish the interface that we are storing the account integration account information. In this case, will be including ID, display name, avatar URL. So those are the property come from the profile retrievers. And the last one is the scope. This is the list of the scope that the user has grounded to the app. Yeah, I will go through one by one. So the first one has credentials. So basically, we can now pass us a list of scope to check whether the user has grounded given a set of the scope. And request credential. This one is a new chain, and is give the app developer flexibilities, or they can control on what scope to ask to the users. So now we can pass a list of the scope in the function request credentials. Then you can allow to, it's possible for you to ask the list of the scope in multiple times, depend on what did the user interact to your app. Yeah. For example, it might have multiple feature, and then if they are interact with feature 1, you can ask a set of scope. But when they interact with feature 2, then you can ask more scope to serve for feature 2. Yeah. There are not any different on the fetch, but just now later I will introduce. Basically, we are starting to support multiple accounts, and fetch will, in this fetch, they go take the account that app will decide, and then that account will be used for the fetch count. Yeah. So get account, the function to return the current account that will be used by Fox to make a fetch count. So in this case, as I just explained, it will return 4 properties: ID, display name, avatar URL, and the scope. And yeah, then list account. This account is the function to return all of the account that the user has integrated. So with that, the list of account, and then we can now determine what is the account that user already integrated, what the scope they grant. So then we can select, app can select what account they want to use. They can switch between them by calling the function as account, by providing the IDs of the ID of the account. Yeah. Yep. So far, that is the new set of external OAuth APIs. Is there any question?
Yes, I do have one. Is there a way to, using the API to disconnect an existing OAuth connection? Because I believe currently this is not possible. Like you need to manually disconnect from the list of OAuth connections. Is there a way to do that via the API?
I see. That's a good question. So right now we don't provide that one as a fork API. So I can see there are two ways that right now how to revoke the connection. So the first one is that the user, they can go to Atlassian page. Basically, we have a profile page for the user, and then they can disconnect that one. The second one, the one developer can proactive do is that they can call you need to call the function by yourself. So after you got the token, right? Just now in the provider, as you can see, because some provider, they don't provide the revoke tokens. So, but for example, in Google, they provide. So then you can call this part in the fork app code, and then you can revoke by yourself. Yeah. Did that answer your question? So we don't have an API, but you can make a fetch call to this address. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, one more question. You mentioned in the new features, you could pass in the scopes to check for if the user allows for these scopes or not.
Yeah.
Does it also require that all of the scopes needs to be added in the package.json first, or can it be incremented? Okay, so you need first to add all the scopes in the package the manifest, and then you can request it incrementally, right?
Yeah, that's the good question. I think right now we don't do kind of dynamic check. You can pass an array, but when we evaluate, we go just check based on what the user consents. So for example, your app might require 4 scope A, B, C, D. User only grant A and B. But if you check whether the user grant the scope E, then it's going to return false. Yeah, but we don't throw any error in case you pass the E, which is an invalid scope. Yeah.
All right, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Then if no more question, then I will move on. So as you can see just now, new capability are unlocked. So the first one, app can now control what scope to ask to the user. So right now, Apple can just pass in the list of scope to ask when calling the function request credential. And the second one, app can accept integration information. So by calling get account or list account, it will return the integration information that include the profile information and grounded scope. Yeah. And last, app now can switch between integrated accounts and yeah. So now Apple can have a control on what account they can use, they want to use. Yeah. Yeah. And there are still more features. As you can see, Fork platform is now tracking grounded scope from consent flow. So recently, we just introduced something called required scope. And if app developer declare what scope required for our functions, we will do the check before executing the fork, the function code. And if the user hasn't grounded those scope yet, the function code will not be executed. Instead, a consent screen is shown on the right side, will be displayed on the users to trigger the consent flows. So this one is kind of like an optimization that we introduced. So if you view this one, then the react from the fork app to respond to the end user will be faster because we don't need to execute the function code. Yeah, we just do some kind of like check-in based on the information we have. Yeah. And this is the last change I'm presenting today. So we are receiving feedback from everywhere that Fork platform should not report failed invocation and log errors when app code call request credentials. And there are no error. It is expected at the app developer behavior. So normally, previously, app developer often do something like they could check whether the user already connect with the app. If not, they could call has credential, request credential. But request credential will cause the invocation considered failed, and there will be a log error on the bottom of the screen on the left side, bottom left. And now there will be no more error log reported on dev console, and invocation success metric is not affected. Yeah. Yeah. So that's on the feature that I want to present for the talk today. Is there any question before I pass to Igor for the for his demo?
Khan, we have one question in the Q&A box from David.
Okay. Being able to list a guy is very good because the connected app screen currently assumes that only sorry, no.
In the Q&A.
Q&A. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna click answer live. Yeah.
Right. So you are saying that there's some need for the kind of like 2LO con, right? Yeah. So currently, recently we did some review on this one, and at the moment we don't have a plan to support on it yet. So one of the reasons is that there are no kind of like no standard for the 2L different provider, for example, Slack or Google or Microsoft, they GitHub, I think GitHub and Slack, their implementation are a bit different, and there are no kind of like common standard on that. So that's why we at the platform.
So what I was most interested in is actually doing it in exactly the same way as the as user, but storing it so that all the users can use the same one. So exactly the same, but it's like a service account, but it's authenticated in exactly the same manner as the as user.
Right, but in this case, they will still use the user token, or it's a separate one? It's a different one.
So in this case, the whole of an Atlassian instance would use the same user. So this might be for a bot or for like a service account, but yeah.
I see there are a few use case for this one. Like we are aware that the Slack bot and I think GitHub bot or GitHub also they have that kind of like as app. So basically the action that the fork trap behind, there will be some app, for example the Slack app, and then there will the fork trap when they make the con actually it's not 3LO, so it's not using the end user tokens, but they are calling the API at the app itself. Yeah. So just now as I share, so basically we found that there are kind of no, at the moment there are no standard and different provider, like they are using different ways. So that's why we haven't supported yet. Yeah.
Sure,
but
I get what you're saying. I think you're just misinterpreting it. It's using the same three-legged, but you store it for the instance that you're using, and then everybody in the instance gets to share that.
I see. So you are saying
can I jump in, Khan? David, just to clarify, so you are referring to something like using a system user or service account, so like a fake user sort of account, which
that kind of thing,
then be connected to external provider via the existing consent flow using Auth to 3LO, and then kind of share that connection across all other users on, I don't know, on the same site, let's say. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
So it's not actually 2LO, it's not actually a ZAP, but it is using user account for calls when there is no actual user available in the context?
Well, potentially, but it's more a case of well, one way of looking at this would be to do it as user, but then allow everybody in the instance to impersonate that user. And I know that sounds like an anti-pattern, but it's not quite
right.
You know.
Yeah, this is interesting idea. Yeah, in terms of implementing this idea, I'll probably leave it with Adam, who is also on the call. But yeah, because I think until now we would like consider or investigate something like using as app, using, I don't know, other client credentials or API key, but this is different. And because it is based on what we already have, at least partially, there might be a chance that implementation for something like this is feasible. But again, that is my personal thoughts, and maybe
Sure,
Adam wants to jump in.
Hey guys, yeah. And hey David, it's the Forge tickets come to life. But yeah, I think similar. Khan, I think had the same misconceptions I did on the ticket as well. But yeah, I think sort of agree with Igor. So yeah, I think it sounds plausible, sort of what you suggested. So I think we'll take it offline and sort of investigate, see what we can do. Hey, there you go.
Sure.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I think we can follow up more on the fork ticket for this use case. Is there any other questions? Okay,
Yep,
if
seems
no,
like
then I
it.
go. I go pass to Igor. Yeah.
Thank you, Khan. Ooh, I'm a little bit nervous. Hey, everyone. My name is Igor. I'm a senior engineer in the Forge Compute team at Atlassian. I joined Atlassian, well, it will be a year and a half ago now, but I have been in the industry for 20 years, even more than that. And yeah, like Khan has already mentioned, what we're going to do the next thing is to take a relatively simple app that has Google integration. And at the moment, it uses all the APIs without enhancements. And together, we will try to improve this app by adopting those enhancements. And hopefully, we will end up with something much better than we currently have. So can you all see my screen? Okay, cool. So yeah, in front of me, I have a very simple Forge app, which is built using Node.js, Node 18 runtime. It also uses UIKit 2, although it recently has been renamed just to UIKit. So it's UIKit Node runtime application, which is able to do two simple things. First thing, it can fetch my Google profile and show profile details on the screen. And the second thing, it can also fetch the contact list under that Google profile using the corresponding API from Google. But yeah, let's see this app in action. Clicking on the Configure App button, which shows us that I'm about to go to Google sign-in, and during the sign-in, so the app will require these 4 scopes to be granted by the user. Let's carry on. I have 2 Google accounts connected currently, but for the time being, I will use my personal test account. Let's click on that. Because yeah, we're using Google testing app, it's asking for some additional questions. Yeah, we'll just skip those. And now Google also wants us to confirm whether we're happy to share some profile information with Google. We definitely are. And because additionally to the profile scopes, we are also asking for contacts scopes, which are considered by Google to be more sensitive. Google is also showing this additional screen where it allows us to choose or not to choose those sensitive scopes. But because I fully trust my round app, I will definitely check all of those. And we hit the continue button. And yeah, voila. So the app works. Like I've said, here we can see my Google account details, including ID, display name, avatar URL, as well as the list of the contacts I have created under the Google account. So let's now try to modify the code a little bit. So we'll start with the get account API. So at the moment, in order to show my profile information, my app needs to make a call to the Google API. But that is kind of strange because in my app manifest, I already have kind of similar setup for profile retriever. So I have that mapping between ID and email and picture and that stuff. So I would assume that Atlassian should already have that data available somewhere. And that's actually the case, but until now we wouldn't expose or provide the data to the developers. However, with the get account API we introduced as a part of these enhancements, this is no longer the case. So basically what I'm going to do, so instead of calling Google, which is a call method when it works, so it's maybe not ASCII format, it's just accessing the data available locally. I will do something like, yeah, something like this. I have my tunnel running. I'll save my change. Cool. And if I refresh my app, you'll see that we can pretty much get the same data we could before, which includes ID, display name, and avatar URL. But additionally, so this new API allows you to retrieve the list of scopes granted by the user. And yeah, depending on your needs, you can use those scopes to do some additional checks, modify user experience, and I don't know, do some other conditional logic like that. So this is the get account API, and I'll pause it here in case if there are any questions about it. Yeah, well, good, awesome. Right, so let's move on then. So the next API change we're going to talk about is the change for has credentials and request credentials methods API. So now you can optionally supply a list of scopes to those. So what I'm going to do, I copy some stuff. So basically, we have these two scopes and just the background of what I'm doing. So at the moment, or just for the moment, let's imagine that for my application here, it is showing the profile info, which is its core functionality, yeah, something that my users like, and this is what they use my app for. While showing list of contacts actually is, I don't know, either secondary or a new feature I want to be introduced to my app, yeah. So the thing is, so at the moment, like we have already seen, before even starting with the app, users need to consent to all 4 scopes. And those scopes include sensitive scopes like contacts, or there can be other scopes like that. So there is there is some chance, at least, that some of your users might be like scared off. Yeah, they will be reluctant to ground those scopes, and they may end up with not even using your app because of that. And this is something we want to avoid with this specific change. So now changes into has credentials and request credentials API allow you to request right scope at the right time. Yeah, for example, in order to display my profile information, I only need to have my profile scopes granted. And for contact details, I need all scopes granted by the user. And this is the change I'm going to implement right now. So now for in order to get my profile info, we only require profile scopes. While in order to get my contacts information, we will ask user to provide all the scopes instead. I'll save this change. If I refresh the page, nothing will change because I already have my account connected on all the scopes granted. So see, the app continues to work. But in case if I go to the connected app screen, which is taking some time, let me quickly remove my existing connection. So done. So if we start from the very beginning with these new changes, so my app still is asking to configure access, but this time, if I click on that button, it is no longer asking me to provide all 4 scopes upfront. So it's only asking the user to provide essential scopes, let's say, or scopes that are contextual to the action that user is about to do. So then we can click continue button. I'll continue using the same account. And here you go. So now the app is able to fetch my profile import, and even if I refresh it, it is still able to do so. So, but because we haven't granted the contact scopes yet, we keep seeing this consent prompt. And if I click on the consent prompt again, this time around, we're asking all 4 scopes from the user. And again, because those scopes, some of those scopes are sensitive scopes, we have some additional checks being made by Google. I need to select those. And if we click continue button, yeah, I can also fetch my contact information from the Google account as well. And yeah, this is the change for request credentials and request credentials APIs. And I'll again pause it here for any questions you might have. No good? No questions? This is cool. All right, let's go on then. Okay, the third API we have introduced as part of these enhancements is the list account APIs. And to help me with this, I will add a couple of resolvers to my code. So those are very simple resolvers from what you can see. So one of those resolvers just requesting credentials for profile scopes only, and the second one for all the scopes. I'll save my change. So, the thing is, when we see a consent prompt like this, and users decide to go through the consent flow, they leave our premises. They go to Google Auth page or Auth page from any other provider, where they might see something like this. They're giving a choice, and we have no control over the account they may pick at this stage. So let's say that I somehow decide to use my other account in here, yeah, not the one I've been using so far. So if I use my work account instead of my test account, we'll continue into this sign-in flow with Google, but as the result of it, nothing has changed. And this is weird. Like if I refresh it, I still keep seeing my test account. So what has happened to my work account then? So yeah, the thing is, like under the hood, I guess this is how I would describe it. So every single connection has its own, I don't know, entry in the database, and all the methods against provider, they use a default account, yeah. And until now, default account will be the very first account connected by the user, and if the user connects the second account, then it will be just hidden, disappear, or not available. So yeah, we thought it would be unfair to hide something like this, and this is the reason why we introduced another API, which is list accounts. So if we return a list of accounts,
so if you looked in connected apps now, you'd see 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. Let me refresh connected apps too. So the account is here disconnected, yet I couldn't use it until now, but we're changing it. So now with the listing API, you can get information about all accounts connected for that Atlassian ID. And if I refresh my page, my app, it should hopefully pick it up. Yeah, here you go. See, now we can see both accounts made available to the app, and I can even switch between those accounts. And when I switch, then I can see different ID and different scopes granted to those. Yeah, this is the list accounts API. Any questions from the audience?
Igor, we have one in the Q&A
Cool.
widget from Toby. If you can check it out.
Right. I've never used that widget, but let me try. Okay, so the question is, why can't we use external auth with Atlassian 3 log? With cross-product apps not being able to be put on the marketplace, this seems like an okay workaround. All right, so Toby, just to clarify, do you mean something like creating Atlassian provider by having key Atlassian next to Google in the list or something like that? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, exactly. Like, for example, for accessing Confluence from Jira apps.
Accessing Confluence from Jira apps. It's an interesting use case. Okay, no comments on that. I don't know. I think I will need help here. Like, I think there probably shouldn't be any specific reasons for that. Maybe something related to providing a more secure approach, because, however, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Khan or Adam or Jan can help me with this, answering this question. Khan, any ideas? Because you've been with Atlassian for longer than myself.
Honestly, I didn't talk about this use case. So we have something called request Jira and request Confluent, and we thought is good enough. So this one is supposed for external auth provider like non-Atlassian one. So I haven't tried. Adam, have you heard about this one?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure what the original thinking was. But sort of some good news is, like, especially for the Jira Confluence crossover, is that sort of we're going to be working on sort of cross-product apps in the second half of this year, including for Marketplace as well. So you will actually be able to, install a Marketplace app in both products and sort of call between APIs, which may not necessarily cover all the Atlassian API use cases, but certainly
I think
between
that's
Confluence and
probably
Jira.
good enough. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Toby.
I wasn't sure if I can talk about it, Adam, but yeah, thanks for saying it.
There you go. It's public information now.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? No. All right. Then let's move on. Where were we? Oh, yeah. Okay. Remember now. So interesting thing, when I keep switching between these accounts, yeah, I keep seeing the same contact information returned here. So even when I choose my work account, which doesn't have contact scopes, and I'm pretty sure I don't have Bruce Wayne in my contacts list for that account, I keep seeing Bruce Wayne. Why is that? So this is where we introduce as account API. Like I have previously mentioned, when we do something like, yeah, .fetch or .has credentials or .request credentials, whatsoever, we always use default account. And in this case, when I do fetch, it uses default account, which is my test account. And that's why it is fetching contact details for that account instead of the selected one. So the change that I need to make should be something as simple as that. So when I put as account in front of fetch, and I need to check selection, change selection probably, and choose my work account, you'll see that now I'm getting there missing scopes because scopes are actually missing. So there is nothing surprising in that. But what a little bit surprising that I do have that has connection request connection, sorry, has credentials and request credentials check, which doesn't seem to be kicking. And this is because of the same reason as well. So I need to make sure that when I do has credentials, which validates scopes for the account, I don't always use my default account. I use the account that is I don't select it in some sort of way. Yeah, when it comes to request credentials, you may or may not do the same. So at the moment, there is no difference, but who knows, with the time we may change it. So probably it is better to be prepared for any changes like that. So yeah, we can use as account in front of request credentials as well. So this time, I don't need to refresh it, but yeah, if I choose my work account rather than showing the error, it will bring the consent prompt instead because of calling request credentials. Yeah, this is all about using as account API. Any questions? No, we're good. All right, we're almost there. There are a few maybe relatively minor things I would like us to talk about before wrapping up. So the required scopes change. At the moment, you can see that for my app to function, we need to at least provide profile scopes. And at the moment, we request those scopes programmatically. Yeah, so in the code, using the request credentials. So now we are introducing an alternative approach to the same. So instead of using code, you can declare the scopes your function require in the manifest instead. So with this change, we can pretty much remove this because having required scopes defined against the function in the manifest guarantees that the function will only be executed if the user has already granted scopes from this list. So I'll comment this out. The thing is, because it's a manifest change, I will need to redeploy my app. So give me a second, please. Yep. Oh, no music. Yeah.
No music yet. But while waiting,
Yeah. Just.
Oh no,
sorry,
yeah, let's just wait for it. I mean, I don't think we have enough time.
Yeah, I just wanted to fill this awkward silence with something. And if it's talk about it, nothing. But, we're almost there. Sorry, blame my internet provider, please. Cool. Let me restart the tunnel. Cool, the tunnel's running. We'll remove existing connections because, yeah, otherwise we will have all the required scopes and we will not see any difference. So now with the connections disabled, if I refresh my app, yeah, we again see the familiar consent prompt. It is no longer triggered by the code. It is rather triggered by the required scope statement in the manifest. If I click configure button as well, we'll see that it is still two scopes that we keep asking user to grant. So like net changes is probably 0, but why using manifest is better is because it is more performant. So the thing is, when you use required scopes in the manifest, so we check those scopes earlier in the request pipeline. So it is just quicker, and obviously because of that, it provides better experience to your users. Yeah, this is probably it about required scopes. Any questions? No, I can't see anything. All right, and the last thing, but not the least, the dev console change that we were talking about. So you could see that we have what's that, thrown or seen at least the consent prompt many times, and it was due to us calling request credentials, and request credentials throws an exception. And until recently, until using Forge API package version 3.5, so every single error thrown by request credentials call would end up as a failed invocation in the metrics. but not anymore. So now we're getting no errors using the newer version of the package, and same applies to the logs as well. So while using the old version package, every needs authentication error will be recorded in the logs, but not anymore. So we're no longer considering this error being an actual error. So we're not logging it, we're not counting it as an invocation error. So yeah, it's expected behavior. Yeah, so it's behavior that is driven by your own code. So it shouldn't really be counted as something bad. So in case if you still want to do some logging around the error, you can obviously add it to your code. Yeah, because the request credential call is in the code, then you can, I don't know, do something like console log and yeah. What's happening? Yeah, something like this, in case if you want to keep monitoring this type of errors. And that's it. That's it from me. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. Igor. Sorry, I think I missed one question from Ulrich. It was asked roughly 20 minutes ago, so I'm not sure if this is still relevant, but Ulrich, do you need this to be answered? So he asked, is this like acting on a webhook or event
No.
listener call?
Yeah, that was with the discussion that David had when we act as app. I think a good use case for that is if you get a notification or like a webhook or, you know, from the Atlassian app, a webhook, and then we don't have a user. So you can't do any external calls because you don't have a specific user that triggered that action. We don't have an authentication context. We only have an app context. And we want to make calls out to Google or whatever as app.
Right. I guess, Ulrich, my understanding that your idea with using SAP via some sort of service account sounds interesting and much more plausible than our original thinking was. So, like Adam has already, I believe, mentioned that we will spend some time exploring this idea and see what is the best experience we can provide for that.
Thank you. I think we have another question. Question from Richard. Oh, Richard was raising his hand. No questions. We're good. Okay. Maybe it was
Thank you, Ron.
accidentally pressed. Any other questions? We still have 9 minutes. If there are none, then thanks everyone. I think we learned a lot this afternoon. And thanks to Igor and Kan for sharing their knowledge. So with that, cheers, and hope to see you in the next Forge Dev Den event.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank
Have a nice day.
you.